Oh, hello and welcome
Oh,
yet
hello.
again to another safety brief. This week, we are talking about cloud control and who you have watching your six, but better said, who's watching your SaaS. So, shout out to Elizabeth, who is unfortunately unable to join us today, but came up with not just all of this beautiful content that you see around us, but also the topic. And we're going to be hitting it today from a perspective of SaaS applications kind of proliferating a lot of what's found in the IT space today. Things like Google Workspace, things like Office 365, SaaS simply meaning software as a service. So something that Matt and I are familiar with from a high level overview. Elizabeth historically introduces us as experts, but I can't introduce ourselves as experts. But we are amateurs on the matter, and we will give our best use of time and value
Oh,
to
I'm
you, our
clueless.
listeners.
There is no mastery of this. The most I use email for is to fish people.
I
That's about
mean,
it.
there you go. The tools of the good will be used also as the tools of the bad, right? But the first thing we're going to talk about here is something called SaaS sprawl, kind of opening up the discussion today. And what that essentially means is it's really, attack surface creep. No different than if you're installing a bunch of applications on a server or a workstation, and there's really not a whole lot of granular control over what applications are installed, similar to that of some users leverage Spotify, some use iTunes, some would use some other form or fashion of media consumption platform of choice. But when there's not a lot of regulation or oversight is a better word from the IT department or just compliance in general over what applications are introduced to the environment from a application based perspective, right? We see the same thing as far as software. What kind of software is being used in the environments, right? Are some people using WeTransfer? Are some people using Dropbox? Are other people using OneDrive like they should? Whatever the standard is, right? So that's kind of the first opening topic, Matt, is for us to discuss is sprawl and what kind of risk introducing new applications or any sort of new things to the environment. What kind of risks are associated with that when users are just installing and using things willy nilly?
Well, I mean, there's lots of risk. If we were to look at it, any application that you are going to bring in is going to have an entirely new set of functionality or features, and it may or may not be developed and built with security in mind. McDonald's would love to have a conversation with people about that.
That's right.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot that can happen if you were to bring in a new application. Specifically today, with everybody's incessant desire to have AI, which isn't actually AI, it's just them wrapping basically ChatGPT in a lovely front end and then sending everything to ChatGPT. There are concerns with what kind of data can actually be leaked from that. Not sure if anybody has seen it, but recently they have actually said that you should not be having conversations with ChatGPT that you wouldn't want people to see.
You wouldn't have with your grown grandmother.
Well, the reason behind this is ChatGPT is now required to save all of your logs, everything.
Right.
They're all visible if you go and you search them in a fun manner.
Right.
There are prompts you can actually use on the web that will flat bring up conversations from other people. So you cannot or should not provide legal advice. You cannot or should not talk about medical issues within ChatGPT. Do not confess anything to ChatGPT that you don't want used against you in a court of law.
That's right.
But here's the big thing: a lot of people are putting enterprise level information into ChatGPT.
Yep.
We're talking PII, we're talking code that they should not be releasing. That's all going to be added into the next iterations of the models, like 5.0 that's or version 5 that's I think about to release or has released. I don't know. Somebody leaked a whole bunch of information about it that was
Right.
an intern. So, there you go. There's your creep right there. Um, but this is why you have to be very careful, because you bring in something new. You don't know what the capabilities are going to be on the back end. You don't know what the limitations are for data storage. You don't know who all theoretically has access to that. We could go into an example of the T application. Does not impact me at all. But how many people joined that app and had to verify their data and then come to find out it was in a completely insecure database?
You talking about TalkTick?
No, I'm talking
Oh.
about the T app that's used to review
Oh,
suitors.
T itself,
Yeah,
like T.
T.
Yes. I thought you
Yeah.
meant like the T word. We weren't allowed to say it.
No. We can say TikTok. It's just if you summon it too many times, then you end up being a streamer that has no future. So, we have to be very careful of that. But no, look at the T app that came out. Everybody thought, oh, this is great. They added it to their stack of things that they wanted to use. Everybody has a stack, whether it's professional or personal. The same things are applicable for personal or professional, because you're using SaaS applications whether you think you are or not. Everything that's being provided is a service. So there you go. That was something that was really bad. The amount of leak that was just let out from that was crazy.
It's a ton of data.
It was a ton of data, and it was all location data. That's what's
Right.
even worse.
Right.
Like, we're not talking about some data or somebody admitting to a crime in ChatGPT.
Right.
We're talking about personal data with location, the complete opposite of what you would want from a secure application for suitors, right?
Right. Which
You're
advertised
talking about
itself
how
as anonymous.
bad it was. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be anonymous, but it's not so anonymous.
Right.
Yeah, it's never a good thing when something like that happens. But that's the thing. You have to look at what the capabilities are of the application that you are using. And it goes back to the old adage. Is it free? If it's free, you're probably the service.
Yeah, it's true.
I hate to say it, but you are more than likely the service. You are what people are going to be using to compensate themselves and get monetary influx of some sort. It's like Facebook. Facebook is free, right?
Right.
How many businesses use Facebook?
A lot.
Exactly. How much of that information that is being given to Facebook is being sold off to third parties?
A lot.
Yeah. Now,
And
are
that's the
you going to
product.
provide anything to Facebook that you wouldn't, or that you would, that you would provide to a competitor? God, no.
Right.
You're not gonna go in there and build your entire marketing strategy in Facebook, knowing that data is going to be sold off.
Right.
So that's managing your creep right there.
Right.
You want control over everything. You don't want it to start slowly going further and further and further outside of your control. The further it goes, the less control you're going to have, and the harder it's going to be to rein that back in when you need to.
No, you're absolutely right. And what Matt's describing, for the sake of the listeners and those catching it live, is creep counter to the Minecrafters of the world, right? Thinking creep is one thing, or those that are
That's
like,
a
oh, creep's a
creeper.
weird person, right? That's right. So basically what happens is this creep, or the scope creep of IT teams, are seeing like the area of which they have to secure, and thus they're responsible for, keeps expanding. It keeps growing, right, outside of their control, sometimes based on some things users are bringing into the workstation, or the workplace, physically onto their computers, locally, right? What kind of websites are they accessing? What kind of tools are they using? But again, I think these large language models and AI bots are a great example of scope creep as it pertains to SaaS, because these are things a lot of companies aren't putting in their acceptable use guidelines, and saying
Mm-hmm.
to their employees, hey, guys and gals, we really do care about this business. We really want to protect it. It obviously pays all of our bills. What Here is what rather a responsible use of these tools look like. Some of these tools are banned. We don't use them, like DeepSeek or DeepMind or whatever it is, right? These are the ones that we say no to. There are other ones that we can say okay to, right? You got Copilot, sometimes included in Office 365, so we're going to use it, right? But businesses, specifically senior leadership, has to speak to this acceptable use policy and say, hey, these are the applications that we stamp as approved to use at work. Here are the things that we stamp as approved to use on your work computers, right? As far as behavior is concerned. And this is how scope creep happens, is that when these expectations, we'll call them what they are, aren't defined for the users just go willy-nilly, right? Now, some would say, oh, well, everybody's going to sign the form and no one's going to listen to it. A counter to that, I think at least 50% of the population is going to look at that and say, hey, work made me sign this thing. Seems pretty serious. I'm not gonna be the one, right? Or be that guy or be that girl that introduces risk or causes a company this or that headache. So that's, again, that's why sprawl or scope creep as far as applications is really important. And I think, ChatGPT and Copilot and Grok and all of these are Gemini are great examples of these are new pieces of software and tools that are sold as a service. Either the user's buying them or they're, bringing them into work and using the free tier. But bringing it back to Office 365 and Google Workspace, where a lot of our listeners find themselves either working out of or administering. Matt, I think your uncanny ability to think like a bad guy is one of your greatest strengths, right? So what are you thinking when you think like a bad guy about what is the benefit if you gain access to Office 365 or Google Workspace? What kind of, crown jewels, metaphorically speaking, what kind of data or access is behind that metaphorical wall that would incentivize you to go chase after it?
I mean, everything. At this point, I mean, back in the day, email was email. It was used for very short conversations, updates, etc. It did not have as much in the terms of data as you would be looking at today. Now everything is done via email. People that are on the sales team, a lot of them don't even use their desktops as much. It's mostly going through their phones. If they use their desktop, it still gets synced to their phones. So you have everything. You have all sales information. You have all contract information. You have client lists, everything that are basically within somebody's email at this point. Email is generally where a lot of people still get their two-factor authentication. So if you own the email, you own the access. Now, that makes it really fun because you go in and, say they're using something like Salesforce.
Right.
If you own their email, you can pretty much assume that the email address that you are in is going to be their login ID because that's how most organizations do it. You now have their email, you have their login ID, and you don't have their password, but there's that lovely reset password button, and it's going to send a link to reset your password.
Yep.
If you own the email, you get the password reset link, you click on it, you delete the email out of the inbox so they don't see it, and you now have reset their password to, a critical application that they need. You can go in there, and if you really wanted to, you could change the email address when you're in Salesforce or whatever app you get access to.
Right.
Now, when they try to log in, it doesn't recognize the email address anymore. So they can't even recover their account unless they go through support.
Right.
Support's
like
then going to have to
someone's
spend
home log.
Basically, yeah. Support's going to have to spend a hell of a lot of time going through and figuring out what happened. Then they're going to have some verification that somebody did it without permission.
Right.
Because as far as they know, you logged in and you made the change. Right. There was no unauthorized activity because there were no failed logins. There was just, password was reset. All these changes were then done. So you now have access to everything, depending on the level of the person that you've taken over. You could have control organizationally. Think about being able to restrict access for, other people to prevent them from getting in to stop whatever your master plan is with all that data. It's a treasure trove of information. I mean, it's the lifeline of most companies. And the sad thing is, there's more information that is monetarily valuable
Right.
on a cell phone than there is on most people's work laptops, because everybody uses their cell phone.
Right.
So if you can get access to that email, you've got access to pretty much anything that you would want. And that makes it really dangerous. That's the scary part. Because we've seen there's threats that are actively being exploited against email.
Right.
And people don't realize it until it's too late. And it's because Microsoft, again, are geniuses. But we've talked about that far too many times, about how they are just leading the charge for the Mensa elite. And yeah.
Right. No, I think it's an important point, really just kind of outlining the the weight of the situation, or the gravity of the situation is when Microsoft went and came out with Office 365, it was leading with the foot of easy to use, feature rich, always up, low maintenance. And that's, give them credit where credit's due. A lot of that's appealing. A lot of administrators, a lot of users like that. So what do we get now? Rather than needing to forcibly install or have to install Office on a computer, you can now access it on the web anywhere. Put it on your phone, put it on your tablet. It all syncs up to this metaphorical cloud, which is really just somebody else's computer. Always is, always will be. But again, it's one of these things that for those that are familiar with portfolios or investments, or it's putting all your eggs in one basket, metaphorically speaking, so that when you put your data in some place that you're maybe not directly in control over or responsible for, it's a metaphorical storage locker. Yeah, it's as safe as the storage locker company or the premises of where it's at, right? And a lot of people say, hey, that's safer than my house, and it's safer than what I can keep my house, and somebody's always there, it's always on, right? I get it. So, but again, the difficulty is if we went and advertised to everybody in our neighborhood, hey, I'm moving my most expensive stuff to Storage Plus down the street at the intersection, right? That's where all the burglaries, that's where all the theft, that's where all the attacks are going to happen now. Is like we've honeypotted, kind of sweetened the deal that if they compromise this environment where we're storing everything, they get a lot more than maybe they would in our, metaphorically speaking, our homes, right? And so, no, I totally get it. And, again, it is one thing for email to just be email. But when you look at OneDrive and you look at Google Drive and you look at all the files that are now stored online and in the cloud, it's like we have put everything gated behind one account, one username, one password. And that's the draw. That's the draw, right? So
not even that. There have been attacks with OneDrive where all you had to do was gain access.
Right.
And it would literally copy everything that was in the OneDrive that's attached to the device and create a secondary folder shared with the email address that you were using as part of the attack. And you couldn't go in there and delete anything because you didn't have permissions to it.
It wasn't your account, yeah.
It wasn't your account,
Exactly.
but it was all copied over to somebody else's account. It was called Double Drive. I had a lot of fun playing with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's more relevant, even more so when you have, just like you said, users that have a desktop application of OneDrive or Google Drive that's synced to their computer, again, leading with the foot of feature rich, easy to use, always on, always available. Again, those always on. I just remember every feature we subscribe to, the bad guys also get, so it's one of those things that's like, yeah.
And a lot of times they're better at using them than we are.
Easier to get in. Exactly. So shifting gears just a little bit, I want to talk about what are the more common attack methods that we've seen used against SaaS. There have been advisories left and right. There have been, we have things like direct send. We have things, there's a lot of stuff in the news right now around Office 365 and SaaS account compromise. And again, it's because that's where we've gated a lot of potential for kinetic chaos for bad guys. But things like phishing, social engineering, spear phishing, account takeover, misconfiguration controls, right, and whatnot. And so I know that we talk about social engineering a lot and whatnot, but I just, to unpack it further, especially going into the holiday season, right? We're staring down the barrel of the school year. That's happening, I feel like, in the next 2 weeks for everybody. But then soon thereafter is going to be Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and everybody's going shopping, right? And so what essentially we see as one of the most common methods is phishing, but even more so, finding something that's relevant enough for that user to have a momentary lapse in judgment where it's so relevant or it's so pertinent to them or their workplace or their personal life, right? That they just click. They just trust, right? They don't even think twice about it. They don't think about, hey, should I be getting my personal American Express, Bank of America, Wells Fargo password reset at my work email, right? For them, sometimes it's a universal mail app, whether it's for iOS or Android, right? It lumps all the inboxes into one. So you're really not even sure where the email's coming into. So for you, it's just email is email. But even if you're sitting at your desk and you're checking Outlook or Google Drive or Google Gmail, rather, it's easy to get tricked by this stuff. So I know a lot of organizations have deployed things like user awareness training and preemptive controls around, hey, how do we scan email before it lands in mailbox? And that's something, we specialize in here at Blockworks, is specifically being able to metaphorically scrub and get an email through this, you know, parable like car wash of sorts, right? Where it goes through all of these filters before delivery. And I think that's a really important point that a lot of companies maybe simply aren't aware exists as far as technology, or they're just so familiar with, you know, Office 365's native controls, which kind of tout a reactive based delivery first type of approach. And so just unpacking, for a brief moment here, as far as, again, we talked about SaaS sprawl. Why is it so prevalent and how has it gotten so prevalent? Because maybe we've let users run away with it, right? They bring in whatever applications they want to the environment using their accounts at work to register for free trials or whatever it is. Second, we then unpacked, why is SaaS appealing? Why is that alluring to threat actors to be chasing after and to get access to you? And then again, now that they're alluring, what are threat actors doing? And so again, we see a lot of phishing, a lot of social engineering where users are unknowingly handing over their keys to their accounts, where bad guys really don't have as much work as they used to. Right? If they're just tricking us, it's a lot easier than brute forcing. But Matt, just thinking from your own personal life, and you're a security guru. You practice what you preach. What are some controls you've put on your accounts, either personally or professionally, to safeguard them? Whether it's so far down the line as YubiKey or temporary one-time pass or MFA. Tell us a little bit about it.
MFA is an absolute requirement. The best way that I've found is to use dummy accounts. In all honesty, I have specific accounts for when I sign up for different things, and that's to ensure that they will not come to my main email address. So if you aren't signing up with an account that you actually care about, makes it a little bit easier to not have to worry about the level of scope creep, because there isn't going to be any blending of that data. Now, you could go to the extent of using a hardware key, but when you are prone to losing crap, that does not help.
It's true.
Because, oh no, I misplaced my key turns into, crap, I can't get into anything. So there's a downside to that. Making sure that you are not writing down your passwords. I know people that still do that.
That's right.
It terrifies the crap out of me. There are these lovely things like Bitwarden is fantastic. It will not only allow you to generate a secure password, but it will keep the secure password for you. And it will make it to where you do not have to actually have it written down yourself. The downside of that is don't forget your master password, or you're also kind of hardware screwed at that point, because they will not reset it for you very quickly. Just something that I've seen in the past. It all comes down to limiting the amount of what somebody can actually see. The best option is using throwaway accounts. You can create as many Gmail accounts as you want. I know people aren't aware of that, but there's some things that you can actually do. Do you want to see if somebody is selling your data? When you sign up with an email account, put your email address and then a plus sign, and then whatever you're signing up for at, basically it would be like john.doe plus Facebook at gmail.com.
Hmm.
And if anything is sold from where you signed up with, it will actually come through tagged based on that object.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to see what companies are selling your data, you can do that. And then if, there
You find
was
that
something
account
in there
compromised.
about saying, do not sell my data, and they sold your data, you can then go after them and ask, well, I opted out of this. Why did you do it anyways? So there's ways that you can actually leverage the technology to benefit yourself and actually help out compared to just blindly, doing things. But it's all about trying to keep yourself safe. It's all about adding layers. It's all about, everything that you can try to do to prevent that level of creep from getting out of your control. There's going to be creep. I don't care who you are. There's going to be creep. Keeping it manageable, that's the hardest thing.
And that's our full-time job, candidly. that's
Yeah.
That's the hardest part is, keeping watch over it 24/7. And that's really kind of where we specialize as a team.
His job is to keep you safe. My job is to creep.
That's right. Well, we need creeps in the world to get, what is it? We need creeps to get loot. What is it? Minecraft?
Something
I don't even know
like
what
that,
creeps do in Minecraft.
Creepers in Minecraft just try to kill you.
That's relevant to real life.
That kind of is.
Creep tries to
Kind
kill
of
you
is.
and your business. So
Just
that's
think of
relevant.
how many creeps got access with that T app.
Yeah, that's real.
I don't even want to think
Creeps
about.
are real in
Yeah, I
video
don't even want
games
to
in
think
real
about
life.
the level of
Creeps are real.
creepers that showed up from that thing.
And they're dangerous. So
They are. They are. They don't
no,
have
Matt,
Steve's lava chicken to keep them healthy.
Great points, Matt. Yeah, as we wrap up, really just summarizing as far as why is it important that you think about SaaS sprawl? Why is it important that you consider what have threat actors really had as far as a carrot on a stick of sorts that, everything's kind of consolidated in one easy place to get when we adopt SaaS applications such as this, and what tactics threat actors use to get access. But more importantly, we're all about resilience and preemptive. And so, to Matt's points around MFA, that's really important. Burner accounts, as far as dual use or single use rather accounts, where hey, I'm using this account for this website or function, and I have a unique password there, so that what happens if I lose that metaphorical key off my key ring, they only get access to that one thing. It's not a master key of sorts, right? So we don't all carry around master key that gets in our car, our house, our locker, at the gym, or whatever, right? So don't go around using the same account and the same password for everything. That's one lesson, right? You wouldn't do it in real life. Don't do it where there's a lot of value gated behind some of those accounts. And then second, using some anonymizing services. I know DuckDuckGo has an email anonymizer. Well, they'll give you a free @duck.com like relay, right? So it rips trackers out of the emails, it rips some other things out of there, but it basically forwards all of the email received at that address to your real email. So what happens if they get that @duck.com account? That's not a login. That's a forwarder, right? So people often use their email address as their login, right? That most platforms use that. And so that's helpful. I know iCloud through Apple, I'm not a guy to advocate for you spending more money, but I know specifically on their iCloud Plus, like if you've locked into paying for photos for the rest of your life, like me, unfortunately, but I take a lot of photos having a family. They have a service called Hide My Email where they generate, just like Matt was saying exactly, they'll generate a faux or a fake email address forwarder. You specify the use case, so it's like a label that you append on it, and then it's used, right? You just use that as your login, use that as your account, your new username. And so definitely some housekeeping as far as remediation. But before you do any of that, before you reduce the risk, throw MFA on those accounts, whether it's financial, whether it's personal, whether it's professional. It should have it regardless. Most banks require it now, obviously for good reason. But wrapping up, we talked about covering your SaaS, and that's really kind of what we specialize with, our fully managed cloud and SaaS protection solution, right? We really hone in on email and account takeover prevention. That's kind of our niche. So if that is of remote interest to you, please feel free to reach out to us at sales@blockworks.com. That's BLOKWORX.com. Like we say, as a funny disclaimer, if you spell it right, you'll find us. If you don't, we are not liable for where you end up. So with that, Matt, any closing thoughts on far as, the risk that SaaS poses, or covering your SaaS, or any resilience you can add to it?
No, I've got nothing.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot, really. Like, again, what was it? Why is it relevant? What incentivizes threat actors to chase after these? Like, why Office 365? Why, Google Workspace? Why are these the ones getting targeted now? And how to mitigate, and what tactics to look out for. So really, really chock full of value, 30 minutes. And again, if there's anything we didn't discuss that y'all would like to hear more on, please feel free to reach out on any of our social handles, or our email, hello@blockworks.com. I really appreciate you guys' time. Until then, have a great week and stay frosty.